name's Alex Slater. I'm the assistant GM of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Very much kind of depends on the day, but a lot of what I'm focused on is the day-to-day operations of the major league team, what our roster needs, if there's an injury, who do we call up, if our pen's tired, just in general, like what players we need to complement, our starters, our relievers, et cetera, what just complements our team the most. That's generally my day-to-day focus. Obviously, depending on the time of the year, it changes. In the off season, it's almost entirely, things revolving around what players to trade and sign for the team, as well as helping to oversee our efforts with our internal website that kind of stores all our data, video, information on players. So, we evaluate them and then use them as tools to hopefully help them be better. Yeah, so basically, I knew I wanted to work in baseball in college. Didn't really know how to do it, so I wrote a letter to Paul DePodesta, who was in the book Moneyball, and luckily he wrote back to me with some advice. Eventually, just after some back and forth, he told me about an intern position with the Padres, and I started there the year after I graduated college as an advanced scouting intern. I had like 3 last days there as an intern. They kept changing GMs, and I just kind of kept surviving under the changes. So I did all sorts of internships there for 2 years. Then they finally hired me full time in 2010, or actually it might have been 2011. Was there for another 4 years, and then came over here pretty much when Andrew came over, and I've been here ever since. But yeah, pretty much just starting as an intern, doing whatever they needed, and it's just sort of grown here. Even here, I've done a lot of different things in my 8 years here. I did. I wasn't very good. I'm not the greatest athlete in the world. So actually, I was pretty good in Little League, but that was probably the apex. Once I got to high school, it was pretty clear I wasn't like one of the better players, and we were a city team, and you could go anytime you saw anyone outside the city, it was like, oh yeah, these guys are much better. So those hopes were dashed very quickly. So then, honestly, it was reading the book Moneyball. Like a lot of people, just like, oh, there's a whole other part of this industry you can do that doesn't require any athletic ability, which is good for me. And so I just started kind of pursuing it from that perspective, and not even really knowing what I was getting into. And like I said, those early years of the Padres, it was just a series of odd jobs, tasks, watching a ton of video. Back then, they would send video in on DVDs. I'd have to chart. I had like a DVD player connected to my desktop computer, and now it's these kids don't know how easy they have it now. It's so different. I mean, I think it's very different now. I got in at a pretty good time, I feel. I think now, like, the qualifications that are required are so different. And it varies organization to organization, but now, like, usually if I'm giving advice to someone, I always say, like, hey, you need to learn another language, whether that's Spanish or like a coding language, so that like you have like some clear demonstrated value. Whereas for me, honestly, like I didn't have any real skill other than like I was willing to work for $8 an hour. That was basically my skill, and happened to get picked. Obviously there's timing is a big part of everything, but I think if you want to put yourself in the best foot forward, it's probably having some sort of distinguishing skill set that's tangible, like a coding language or a spoken language, or just something that is able to separate you from everyone else who just wants it. Whereas I will fully admit I was lucky to just come in at a time when wanting it was enough, and because I worked for a small team, I got to be exposed to so many different things because we had like 8 people in our department in the office, whereas now, at least here and a lot of other teams, it's so specialized, where if you come in on an intern, you're just focused on like this one part, whereas I got to be exposed to like all sorts of things because there just wasn't enough manpower. So I mean, I guess the thing, I don't know if this is like a surprise, but like certainly how I viewed this when I started was like the players were such like a different entity. I'd be on eggshells around them, and I don't think I appreciated, one, how much you can enjoy interacting with them. They're just people that happen to be really good at, you know, their craft. So I think that kind of surprised me, and just like how you can, you know, even when it's great legendary players, you just have a normal conversation from them. They have good insights, they have good thoughts, like they're just like any other group of people. They just happen to be really good at this one particular thing. So that was a little surprise for me. I think I would like put them up on a pedestal before, in almost like a negative way in terms of how I would interact with them. Like, oh my God, it's the players, I gotta be on eggshells. Whereas I think the more I've been around them, like, they're people. And yeah, just like any other group of people, there's a great deal of diversity of personalities, like how they process information, how they think about things, and like often like you can get much better insights from them, you know, because they're seeing something from a different lens and angle that like we're not. So that's been a little bit of a surprise for me, although some people might assume that. Yes. Yeah, I've been to several weddings, and I even went to Europe once during the All-Star break, which the coaches made fun of me for. I met the team in Boston, and I had like a giant baguette in my hand. Yeah, that was I took a lot of flack for that one. But yeah, like I've been able to. You can take vacations, weddings, but like I vividly can remember friends' weddings I've been at where I'm watching our game. I can still tell you. We were playing the Rockies, and Scott Alexander gave up like a home run to, I think it was Ryan McMahon. It was like 2 outs in the ninth, and I was like, oh. And it kind of like spoils that's the other, maybe this kind of harkens back to the surprise thing, but it is incredible how much the winning and losing can affect your mood. Whereas like, you know, probably 8 times out of 10, that's like a rollover ground ball and the game's over. And then it happens to be the time like he just gets a hold of one, and it just like your mood is like so different. But yeah, I've watched a lot of games under the table on my phone at weddings. It's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting question. So for me, it's interesting because I'm biracial. My mom's Chinese. My dad is very white. I don't even. I think it's like English, like white, like goes back a long ways. And for me, it was interesting growing up because I grew up in a very Asian neighborhood. The schools I went to were very Asian. My friends, like if you look at my wedding photo, my groomsmen, like 4 of the 5, I think, are Asian, or 4 of the 6. You know, my grandma, who's my mother's side, lived with us. And when you're biracial, it's always a little like interesting because on the one side, you know, most of the world will view you as Asian because, you know, that's closer to what you look like, but then the Asian side will often put you in the other bucket because you're not, you know, as Asian as them. So that, I mean, that's more just the experience, but it's, you know, it's funny too because even though I grew up in, you know, all the way, I mean, even my college, I went to Berkeley, it's very Asian, like even though my whole life is kind of, it's been around, you know, predominantly Asian people, you know, just the neighborhoods I've lived in, the schools I've went to, it is interesting because you're still in like kind of white society, and baseball's extremely white game, as you know, and because in white society sometimes you don't feel like you can be, you know, you try to conform, but I think is the cool thing is as I've gotten older is like you kind of don't care about that stuff anymore, and then you appreciate that like, oh wow, like as a kid I got to have all this great food, got to go to like Hong Kong several times and do all these things that's like more unique as opposed to kind of like what everyone else has, like even here, like going to, you know, like if you know, and it gives me like an appreciation for a lot of those experiences, and like, you know, even now, like if I'm gonna eat Chinese food, I won't eat it. Like no offense to any restaurants here, but like I will go to the San Gabriel Valley if I'm gonna get Chinese food because it's just a lot better and a lot more like authentic and more unique versus like tend to be if you're on the west side, which admittedly like I live more on this side. It's it's a little, it's not made for Asian people. Whereas if you go to San Gabriel, it's like, oh yeah, it's like they don't care. They're just making the food. They don't care who it's for, and it's a lot better. But yeah, I don't know if that quite answers the question, but that's a little more, I guess, my experience with it, where it's interesting because it's been so much, like it's way more what I would, because of where I grew up, who my friends were, what schools I were, I actually like tend to identify more on that side. But it is interesting because then in the baseball side, like there's very few. It's probably been now at this point it's been my adult life, but it's funny, it is kind of like the first time in my life where I guess it's been 13 years now where it's like it's probably the first setting I've been in where I haven't been around predominantly Asian people. I think it is important, mostly in the sense of just seeing someone can do it. Like the one thing I'd say, and I can only speak to my experience, I've never had an experience in baseball where it's been an issue or come up. But I do think it's just representation, like you said, where it's like, oh, like it's not an issue, and like probably the most, while certainly I think it's, both as a woman, but as an Asian, like Kim Ng was probably like the first person, like, oh, like wow, there's an Asian executive, and for a lot of people, it's there's a female executive. There's certainly a few more now, but it's still an industry that's generally skews very white and extremely male. But I think it's exactly what you said. It's representation. It's not so much that, because I don't think there's, I don't know, at least personally, I've never seen like any like clear biases or like roadblocks, but if you don't see it, like you just might be less likely to go for it. It's more that, it's like more institutional, not so much like there's any, anything beyond that. Whereas I just think it like, it's at least helpful, like, oh yeah, Kim Ng, she did it, like it could be done. So like I think it's exactly what it's representation. It's not that, I think that's just, yeah, that's the value.
Chaitali, Gala, Mehta, Chief Operating Officer, Los Angeles Dodgers Foundation. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Los Angeles Dodgers Foundation, and so what does that mean? I get to work alongside an amazing team and oversee the general day-to-day operations of the foundation, which includes all of our legal issues, risk, finance, HR, and just anything that comes up. So there's never kind of a typical day. It's just whatever is kind of happening to keep things up and running. So I started off in 2014 as the Director of Grants and Partnerships when the organization was first bought out by the new ownership group, and Nicole Whiteman, our CEO, was brought on to really kind of reformulate and redesign the foundation. And so I had the opportunity to join the team then and really kind of build my position from the ground up. And so over the years, just really continuing to grow and learn and take opportunities as they arose. And so in 2019, when the opportunity came up to become the Chief Operating Officer, I threw my hat in, and here we are. Never. So I never thought that this would be a career path for me. Growing up in a traditional South Asian household, I always grew up thinking that you could be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. And so for me to be in philanthropy and working in baseball, two things that I never thought even went together growing up, this is such a unique opportunity for me and has just opened my eyes to just all the different opportunities that are out there. And I hope that I'm living an example for my little daughter. At the foundation, I just feel like there's just so much opportunity to impact in our community. And so I feel like on a day in and day out basis, being able to live up to our mission and vision that we really work for a place that allows for every Angelino, regardless of their zip code, to thrive. For me, it's just like lucky to live in that mission and vision every single day. I will also say that working for an organization that has so much diversity, especially amongst its leadership, is just really special to me. And again, I think for my daughter to see the foundation being run by women and women of color, it's just something really exciting and just is normal for her, which makes me really proud, because I know then for her, she won't have any limits in terms of what she thinks she can achieve. It's so important, I think traditionally when people look at sports franchises and teams, they see the players on the field and they think that's kind of what the makeup of an organization is. And I think even for me, coming in from the outside and understanding all the different pieces that go into actually running and managing off the field, all the different pieces that it takes, I think it's so important, not only from the perspective of the external world understanding, but all the perspectives that diversity and representation can bring to the business and community needs of any sports team franchise. And so what different groups can bring, women can bring to what is traditionally considered, that is a male sport. It's just so important, and I think it just adds value to the franchise and what it means to the community. Yeah, it's such a special opportunity to recognize, my kind of colleagues that are in the space. We're a smaller group, but I feel like it's so special, again, for me to see people like me in the industry working in the same space, but even more so for my daughter and for the next generation of people coming up to see people like them in the ranks, so that they can see, oh, I could do that one day, and this is like actually a track that I could go on, and I could actually share with my parents. They'll be like, oh, okay, I know what that means, and I understand. And so it's so important, and so I think it's always important, but it's great that in May we get to really recognize it and uplift it, and share all the great things that are happening throughout the year. The advice that I would have for somebody that would like to be in the position that I have now is to always work really, really hard, and think of everything as an opportunity, and also just do what you believe in. Because I think that combination of hard work, a little bit of luck, and true belief and passion in what you do will kind of open the doors that you need to get to where you need to go.
Erick Vazquez, Director of Production, Los Angeles Dodgers. Well, my role works with various people in production. We have a pretty strong team of editors, producers, shooters, and each day kind of varies depending on the homestand, but in general, it's a lot of content coverage, whether it's for in-game, TV, sometimes we help the social team, but that's just basically an in-house agency. So during a home game, we usually come in and prep elements needed for the game, and then after that, it kind of depends on what happens, whether there's a pregame guest, like one week we had the Rams come visit, or if there's something happening towards the end of the game where there's like a walk-off or something historic related, and sometimes we'll shoot the game, but for the most part, our team stays inside and produces content that runs on the scoreboard and various other outlets. I started off as a production coordinator back in 2009, and I became staff in 2010. I think I just, over the years of being involved in the production workflow, I've kind of slowly moved up from production coordinator to senior producer and to now director of production. I always knew I would work in entertainment, but I didn't think sports would be where I would land. I always, dreamt, I was a Laker fan, Dodger fan. I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to work for those teams, and I didn't know it actually happened, but it did, and it's been pretty cool. It's funny, being of South Asian descent, I heard Chaitali speak about this, you grow up with family customs and traditions where, like, someone who's of that heritage, typically is known to work as a doctor or engineer or in IT or something like that. And technically, I still work in computers, but I would say, you just got to follow your dreams. Everybody has thoughts and dreams and ideas of things, but really, you just got to pursue what you want to do. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to work in a field that I love working in and doing what I love to do. Yeah, I mentioned, my mom is South Asian, she's Indian, very strict, conservative Indian woman. And, I think I would normally say it was an actual video or something I worked on, but I took her as my date to the Emmys once. And so we have the opportunity to win awards sometimes for what we work on if it's on television. And so she was my date for the Emmys, and I won the night she came. And so I would say that kind of helped solidify my career path with my mom. And I think that was the first time I heard her, she's always been proud of me, but I could tell she now believes in the dream that I had. I probably would say the Seven Nation Army video. So I made a video to the White Stripes song, Seven Nation Army, that has been running for a long time. It's probably been running, it's probably older than some kids. It's 8 years ago or something like that. They're 2013 or 14 it ran, and it's been running ever since. And it's just a cool video because I kind of took a example from the White Stripes video, and it's got my hands clapping in, and so it gives me chills every time I see it and seeing a full stadium react to my hands in the video I made. Everybody thinks our job is glamorous and easy and we can hang out with players, but there's a lot of it's a grind. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of moving pieces. A lot of people like to assume that I make all the videos that they see on the scoreboard, but it's a whole team of us, and I guess that's what I would say. It's we pretty much have a lot of people contribute to the stuff that we put out. Because I'm mixed, so I'm half Latin, half Indian, but for me, it makes me feel proud of my South Asian heritage, although I may not show it in the way I dress and talk, and, I don't speak the language, I'm still very proud of where I came from, and it's nice to have a month dedicated to honoring my colleagues that are in the same spectrum. I think it's very important because you're going to look 20 years down the line, and hopefully I'm a person that a kid aspiring to work in my field is inspired by.
Jenny O, Senior Director, Partnership Services and Administration for the Los Angeles Dodgers. So I'm the Senior Director of Partnership Services for the Global Partnerships Department. So it is all our corporate sponsors on the revenue business side. Once we secure these partners, I oversee the team that manages all the contracts and make sure everything gets delivered, make sure clients are very happy with everything, and just hopefully they will return, spend more money, and renew, and be longtime partners with the Dodgers for a while. A lot of the center field plaza signage placements, those were all part of our department, and actually there was one that was created on the field level, which is predominantly a television sign. So a lot of these companies, they associate the games with their brand. So the viewership and the in-stadium audience, that's a lot of audience and the dollar figures, and it makes sense for their companies to spend money. So we were part in trying to create these positions because there's not a lot of positions in the stadium. We also want to keep it clean overall and not have so much advertising. So that is one of the main prideful things of the stadium is that we try to keep like the integrity of like the history of Dodger Stadium, but also be involved in like generating revenue for the team. So I was born and raised native Los Angelino, went to school at UCLA, so local kid, and I always enjoyed sports. Being a youth, I actually came to Dodger games with my family, so sit on the reserve level with my mom and my brother, and that was one of the things that we would enjoy coming to baseball games. And when I graduated, I wanted to work in sports. I actually worked for the LA Clippers in the sports arena, and small world, sports is very small. So the season had ended, and then I got referred to the Dodgers to work in ticketing. Well, I think starting in ticket sales, or honestly like interning at any department is probably important. Our department more so than most, we interact with several departments like internally, so that is like one of the benefits of working in global partnerships. But I think it's just trying to find the path of like, do you want to work on the business side or the baseball operations side? But honestly, like working for a professional sports team, you don't necessarily have to be a Dodger fan. There is jobs for everyone. AAPI month is really important because for myself as a Korean American, I find pride in my culture, and it is nice to be able to share with others. Education through food, heritage like things that happen in families. So it is nice to see more representation, especially in sports. We're very lucky in Los Angeles that we have a lot of employees that are AAPI. So that is one thing that I'm happy about at the Dodgers. Representation, especially in the AAPI community, to have a seat at the table, to have a voice, to be able to be a decision maker and influence, especially in Los Angeles, it's so diverse. You speak for the cultures, and that's something that weighs heavy on me to educate all the senior leadership and obviously front office staff.
Scott Akasaki, Senior Director of Team Travel. Well, I'm the Senior Director of Team Travel. I started in January of 2000 as an assistant in the Asian Operations Department. In that capacity, when I first started, I did research into Japanese players, who we wanted in Japan, and eventually became the interpreter for two players, Hideo Nomo and Kazuhisa Ishii. And then migrated to the team travel position, which I've been in for about 17 years approximately. Well, it was actually a blessing for me because it was Hideo Nomo's second time around. And he had been in the league for at least 5-6 years. So Nomo was really teaching me on life in the major leagues, traveling with the team, going to these National League cities. So that was really a great learning experience for someone who was in their early 20s at that point. Every day is different as an interpreter. You are awake when the player is awake, and a call can come at any moment to really go over scouting reports, or if you're in the hotel, maybe place an order for room service, or you're out of towels or toilet paper or something like that. So it's really, you have to be on your toes at all times as the team's interpreter. You know, I think at that time, and it was for two guys, right? Ishii and Nomo, and they were 2/5 of the rotation, so there was always work to be done. And at that time, Barry Bonds was in his heyday. So to be able to take our advanced scouting information, translate it, provide it to Ishii and Nomo, and then to see the results, right? To see them try to get Barry out at that point was really something that was, I thought was very special at that point in my life. Yes, I travel with the team, so every trip, but it is a lot. You know, it's staying organized, it's staying ahead, and I think a lot of people do a pretty good job of keeping themselves organized, which keeps me organized. So it's rooming lists, it's flight manifests, it's itineraries, 2-3 weeks. I try to stay at least 2-3 weeks ahead. But there's also things that, of course, some trips may be easier than others in terms of the travel, but after 16, 17 years, it's almost like a recipe now. I think the most important thing is the ability to communicate. So I think what often gets overlooked these days is the simple way to express your thoughts via the written word. I think that is so much, we're always on our phones, we're sending messages, but a lot of times the true meaning of a message can be missed. So I really think expressing your ideas effectively and clearly and concisely is extremely important. And that can be learned junior high, high school, college, right? So whatever level you are at, your reading and writing skills obviously play a huge role in that, but I want to say that to me would be a great skill to learn, and obviously being organized. This month is extremely important to me. It all starts with my grandparents and parents. So I'm old enough, my parents are old enough, that during World War II, they were incarcerated in these desolate camps throughout the United States. They were in Arkansas and Arizona. So growing up in our home with my aunts and uncles around, they started to talk about camp, right? And I didn't know what camp was, but as you get older and you start to learn about it in history books, you understand that this was not a great experience for Japanese Americans during World War II. But yet, as a whole, Japanese Americans took a very negative experience, and I think they turned it into a positive. So not only that, but the experience of the 100th Regimental Combat Team and the 442nd, which is the most decorated military fighting unit in American history, are 2 points that that we can be very proud of as Japanese Americans. So how do I feel about this month? Extremely full of pride in that here I am with parents that were at one point put behind barbed wire, and yet here working for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I have people tricked for a while in that I'm in a position of responsibility. So it's been really a dream come true, really an American dream. I think that's great. So whether it's people in my position, whether it's third base, whether it's in the manager's seat, whether it's the people who run the social media, I believe that all positions within the Dodgers are attainable. Certainly we see that with who the Vice President of the United States is at the present day, right? So I think that the skies are the limit for anybody, whether you're of any color, of any gender. So big month, very excited, and very appreciative of the people who came before me as well.
Kristen, Jareck, Director of Partnership Services in the Global Partnerships Department. I'm Director of Global Partnership Services. My day-to-day looks very different every day, depending if it's a game day or depending if it's a non-game day. my department oversees all of our corporate clients, so we manage all of the big accounts that you see around the stadium, all the signage, hospitality, promotions, anything that has to do with any of our partners is something that we oversee. My career path here started, I actually moved down here, moved to LA, went to USC, graduated with a PR degree. Worked a little bit in sports and entertainment PR. Right out of college, I worked for a smaller PR agency in entertainment, decided that really wasn't something I wanted to do. My other passion was working in sports. So from there, I worked at Clear Channel, which is now iHeart, doing some sports radio stuff, and then decided I wanted to work for a team. Didn't really see any jobs available. I did some sort of informational interviews with people, different teams around LA. Finally, there was a job posted for the Dodgers in their partnerships department. I had set up an informational interview with someone here a few months before, so I'd already known that person. Ended up applying for the position, and I've been here for 17 years. You know, it takes a lot of perseverance with any position you want to be in, especially in sports. It's a really competitive industry. I think honestly, networking, I know that sounds like really cliche, but a lot of networking, really helps, and kind of what I did. I mean, I did this 17 years ago. I just set up interviews with people who were willing to listen to me, willing to talk to me, and just made connections there, and ended up with a job. AAPI Month means a lot to me, to be able to have a month where we really celebrate our culture and our heritage. Growing up, we didn't really have AAPI Month. It wasn't something that we learned about. So now to be able to see it really in the mainstream media, to see that my kids are learning about it, is something really special. I think it's super important. I mean, for anyone that's looking to be in the sports industry or have a career in sports, it's really important to have people in those positions that are diverse. And I was lucky, here at the Dodgers to have a lot of people that oversaw me that were in those positions.
Hi, my name's Yoshida. I'm the Senior Director of Graphic Design for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Senior Director of Graphic Design. My day-to-day varies, from just making sure our timeline is straight, making sure that our projects are getting out on time, to just coming up with new concepts, approving logos, things like that. I started out actually with the Dodgers answering phones. Not to age myself, but I started the year after Nomo made his debut. Not to age myself, but that's where I started, and I gradually worked my way up just by getting to know people. And I started out just as a graphic designer, and I moved my way up to manager, senior manager, director, and now senior director over the past 18 full-time seasons. No, I actually imagined myself playing professional baseball because I was not too bad in Little League. But probably around 12, 13, I quickly realized that my baseball skills probably weren't going to get me very far. I can't say this is what I always wanted to do, because when I was growing up, there was no, we didn't know that there were going to be graphic designers working for sports teams. I also didn't even know what graphic design was until probably my senior year of high school. So no, I didn't know this is what I wanted to do, but in the end, it kind of just worked out, and I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. I would just say to always advocate for yourself. As Asian Americans, I feel like, not to generalize too much, but we're kind of taught not to be the nail that sticks out. But you really need to find your voice. make your voice heard, advocate for yourself, and that's the way you'll advance in your career. AAPI month is a really cool thing for me. Growing up, I don't remember there being any kind of AAPI month, so I think it's really great that we're able to recognize the accomplishments of our fellow AAPIs, and we're also able to kind of reflect on all the AAPIs that pioneered and kind of paved the way for us. I think it's very important because if you look at the field, you see players of all different backgrounds. You see coaches of all different backgrounds. So I think it just makes sense that the front office represents that. I personally think it's very important. I think it's great to walk into a meeting and see not only other faces that look like mine, but also just other diverse faces as part of the group. I'm just proud of being able to last in one place for 18 seasons, but also able to give my kids the experience of coming to Dodger games like I had growing up. Of course, they got a little better experience than me. They got better seats, and they got to take the field a few times with the players. But just being able to pass that love of baseball down is probably what I'm most proud of. Even as a Japanese American, not being from Japan or never even having visited Japan, when Nomo was doing his thing, I felt an immense sense of pride, mainly because it was the first time I saw someone on the baseball field dominating someone that looked like me, and I just thought that was a really cool thing.
Tiffany Rubin, Director of Programs, Los Angeles Dodgers Foundation. So my title is Director of Programs. I get to full-on work with a bunch of youth within Los Angeles, primarily within our Dodgers Dream Team program, formerly Dodgers RBI, which is a sports-based youth development program where we impact over 12,000 boys and girls across 88 locations. We're able to use sports, baseball and softball, as really the engagement factor in providing kids with education, health, resources to really complement the program and make it very holistic. Additionally, I oversee another program called Dodgers Dream Fields, where we build and refurbish baseball and softball fields in communities to make sure there are safe places for kids to play, and also make them feel like they have a mini Dodger stadium within their own backyards. So sports has been with me since I was born. I played baseball, basketball, and softball, high school, and then was lucky enough to attend Morgan State University and play at the collegiate level. So sports, I felt like was always within my comfort zone. I just didn't realize at the time that a sports career existed. After college, I got to work with the Philadelphia Phillies and experience what a major league club was like and learn about the different departments that I had no idea about. From there, I grew a passion for community outreach and giving back. And the concept of what a sport did so much for me and how I can use, my brand, my opportunity to give back, I think was so appealing. From there, just networking with all individuals, learning more about the different positions and titles that were involved, led me to the Dodgers Foundation, where a position was open. I had an opportunity to come back home, work for a home club, and impact my own community, which was just a huge, huge driver for me, and just kept my passion alive. I would say work hard, but stay true to yourself. I think within this industry, there's only a certain amount of positions available, and just keeping that networking skill and just being able to put yourself out there. You just never know who's watching, who's looking for someone, but making sure that you stay true to your own values of what's important for yourself. Yeah, so honestly, I'm just proud to be Asian. My mother was born in Malaysia and came to this country for an opportunity. And I've just been able to learn from her, see how hard she has worked, and being able to represent her means a lot to me. I just love being able to work with so many other Asian colleagues and people who have paved the way for me. So I take it seriously, and I want to make sure that I represent the people that came before me and even after me. There's opportunities for all of us. It's huge. You look for people that look like you, whether that's on the field, off the field, so you can see that light at the end of the tunnel. I think a great example of someone like Kim Ing that looks like us, that's making a huge difference, makes it feel like things are definitely possible. Ooh, apart from the World Series, that's a big one to top. I think over my career path with LADF, I've just enjoyed being able to impact thousands of youth. Our program right now serves 12,000 boys and girls that have the opportunity to play sports, but also have the opportunity to receive access around education and health. And that's huge for me, being able to have a brand to do that, and knowing how much this sport has brought to my life, and being able to do that for so many others. It feels like a World Series win for me.
My name is John SooHoo. I am the Los Angeles Dodgers team photographer, and I've been with the Dodgers since 1985. I did start at USC, working for the school paper, doing darkroom work for the Daily Trojan, and then I became the photographer there, then the photo editor there. And I met the NBA photographer, Andy Bernstein, who was the NBA photographer for the Lakers, actually for the whole league. And he happened to have the Dodger contract in 1984 and 1985. And so he brought me on board to do the darkroom work for the NBA stuff, and of the Showtime Lakers and the Clippers back in the sports arena days. And so a blink, and next thing you know, it's 2022. Immediately, Gibson's home run. That's probably the most iconic and that carried for so many years, obviously until 2020. The other two could be anything at this point. I mean, going to the White House with Vince Scully, going with that '88 team to the White House also was, pretty exciting. And then, certain portraits along the way here of Kershaw and Koufax together, or name a game. Any of them between, Finley's home run in 2004, Puig's walk-off home runs, JT's walk-off home runs, and just a whole bunch of them. Well, as a film user, because there wasn't such beast as a digital format at the time, I was actually the black and white photographer, and so each roll of film is 36 images, and so by the 7th inning or so, I already had probably half the roll already shot on something, or just whatever. I don't know what it was, but I just knew in the 9th inning when Gibby started coming towards the on-deck circle, I just said to myself, I'm at 18. I better change roles, or I'm going to miss it. And so I'm glad I did, because history was made. I would say to try to become a team photographer, you better have good personality skills. You better have the ability to shoot sports, not just in between the lines, but outside the lines. And so your integrity is also always in question as a team photographer, because I'm kind of blessed to have all these years with the Dodgers at this time, and they don't just let anybody in there, and no other team just lets anybody in. You have to build that trust, and so that trust is probably larger than my skills on the field to shoot sports. It becomes more significant the more we get beat on, and the more atrocities that happen to Asians throughout the country, the more important it becomes. Honestly, before this, I'm just trying to be a American Asian photographer doing my job. I don't even notice the Asian, the American Asian part. I'm just trying to do my job. But this brings it to light that I have a platform, because I have a large following, that maybe the appreciation of being Asian American kind of helps, with some other young kid who might have the same kind of frustrations. The closest thing I had like as a role model in that way would be Bruce Lee, and then he died at a young age, and it was like, now what? You know, and so there really hasn't been that kind of remarkable human, you know, American Asian that could step to the forefront. And you know, you're getting a lot more now. Like Simu Liu's like probably one of my favorite actors out there. There are a lot more shows out there like Warrior that are, you know, give us at least a benefit of a number one English-speaking roles, but just where we're not, you know, all thought of as just being from across the seas. We're, you know, we're American-born Asians.
SooJo, Director of Social Media. So as the Director of Social Media, my day-to-day is just kind of getting ready for the game that's that day. If it's at home, I have a lot more to do, which is to kind of plan like what we're going to be posting that day, whether it's ticketing, whether it's promotions, or if it's just like a sponsored post, we have to get out of the way, and then we'll handle the lineups and then get ready for the game, handle BP, pre-game, and get all those posted before the first pitch. Yeah, so I didn't start in baseball. Baseball has always been a big part of my life, but it wasn't something that that I imagined kind of being in, especially in social media, just because it didn't exist back then. I mean, it did, but it wasn't like you couldn't have a job in this. So initially, I started off as a news writer in Chicago, kind of, you know, working the really early hour shifts, and it was great after, you know, after a while, but got to me a little bit. It was a little exhausting, so. I ended up kind of working for the Chicago White Sox there, kind of in a part-time capacity to see if I wanted to do that role, and eventually made my way over to the Dodgers, where I kind of worked as a part-timer MLB employee, and then a part-timer as a Dodgers, and eventually kind of advancing to full-time. I think people always look at my job and think it's the greatest job in the world and it's super easy and just fun all the time, and it is. It's, you know, it is the great job. It's fun all the time, but there's also times where, you know, it's really stressful, right? There's a lot that has to go with it. Every post that goes up is really well thought out. You know, it's a ticketing post, but you know, you need to make sure you have the right assets to go along with it. You need to make sure the language that you're putting out there is acceptable. Because, you know, as everyone knows with social media, everything is one screenshot away from, you know, you getting in trouble. So everything has to be well thought out, and I think there's a stress that goes along with that that not many people know about, and a lot of fans have post notifications on. So even if you delete it in 30 seconds, you know, someone's already screenshotted it and replying to the tweet. So yeah, there's a lot of stress in that. Also, you know, it's baseball, so there's a lot of games, and it takes a lot out of you, but luckily I have a really good team in place that can kind of help with that. But yeah, I think that's just some of the things that most people don't really recognize. I think winning the World Series is something that was really awesome because it was also in the bubble, and that was such an incredible experience, kind of like a one time in a lifetime thing where you were literally just in a bubble, could not go anywhere. You were playing the game, every round of the game at that same stadium. No one could go in or out of the bubble. So it was kind of a really interesting experience, and to win it on top of all that was just awesome. I think it's super important just because you want other kids out there to look at somebody, you know, like me or like someone else that's in a leadership position and say, that person looks like me, and that means I can make it there too. So I think it's super important. I think with kids, and I think it's easier when you're growing up, but when you're kids and you're trying to, you know, pick what you want to do for your life, it's easy to kind of imagine your future when you can see someone that looks like you doing what you kind of want to do. So I think it's really important. I hope that I can, someone can look at me and say, you know, she's Korean, she's Asian, she's, you know, AAPI, and she's out there doing, and that just means that I can do that too. You know, right now, I mean, even so now, I don't see that there's many AAPI social media, you know, directors or managers or coordinators that I've personally seen. And so I think when I was first getting into this environment, it was a little tough for me because, you know, even though I'm grown, you just don't see people that look like me out there a lot. And I hope that will change going forward. It means a lot to me. Like I said, growing up, you didn't really see a lot of that. We didn't really celebrate AAPI month. I think it's kind of fairly new, but it's been really nice to be able to celebrate our culture and our fellow AAPI and just to kind of recognize all the great work that everyone's doing.
My name is Saqib Bahadar. My title here with the Los Angeles Dodgers is Endpoint Technician. So my title with the Dodgers is as an endpoint technician in the IT department. Day to day, our team handles a wide variety of technology throughout the stadium. We do end user support, from users all over the organization that call in terms of like scouts, the day-to-day users here in the offices here, executives and whatnot. Basically handle any technology needs, any technology troubleshooting. Our team as a whole handles a lot around the stadium in terms of networking, as well as the ticketing system for people to come into the gates. And yeah, it's so much more security and yeah. Yeah, so I started off career-wise, well, I went to a tech-based high school first of all. So that's where I kind of got my first hands-on, kind of like playing with technology, kind of learning it, exploring, the different aspects of it as well. And then I decided to go to school at Cal State Northridge, where I decided to pursue my career in technology. I did my bachelor's degree in computer information technology there. From there, I graduated, worked at an elementary school doing IT work for a school, and then ended up here with the Los Angeles Dodgers a few years later. With technology, you always have to constantly learn. You have to stay up to date with the latest and newest technology. But find something. There's a lot of different things you can do within technology, but find something that you find fun and interesting, something you actually really like to do. Because with IT, you could get into security, you can get into networking, you can get into a lot of different fields, and so that's my advice. Important for me because it means my heritage from where I came from. Brought a lot of value. It kind of made me who I am. So kind of recognizing and celebrating like that's a part of me, and I kind of want to share some of those like stories and kind of basically just recognize like your background, and I feel like it's very important with all different cultures. So that's why I find it pretty critical to kind of show. Previously, there wasn't too many representations of Asian Americans in sports, and as there is nowadays, I see a lot of different ethnicities and backgrounds and people from all over the world kind of representing in sports, and especially Asians in particular. I've seen it growing, especially with the Dodgers, you have Dave Roberts and a lot of front office people that have that background. Yeah, it's important to have, to me, like I find you learn more from the different types of people you run across, from all different variations of backgrounds, and having that representation in such a major league team like Los Angeles Dodgers is critical, because it shows younger generations that have they can be at that position one day, and even if it's just an office job like an IT person or whatever, I never thought I'd be here also. So. What kind of even surprised was when I started working for the Dodgers. I didn't understand, so much of like, the business and like how much it relies on technology in terms of technology around the stadium, and how much work gets done behind the scenes. So just basically in general, like the whole variety of like how much our team has to work together for us to even run one day's worth of a game. Like how much technology is incorporated basically throughout the whole stadium is pretty surprising. Yeah, so in my role, we pretty much handle everyone. We deal with the coaching staff, like Dave Roberts and his crew, and then we support basically everyone in the executive side, all the normal front office employees, as well as the scouts all around the world. We have scouts in, Japan. We have scouts in Uganda. We have personnel basically all over the United States, and our role pretty much touches every single. We assist every single person.
Will Ireton, Performance Operations Manager. My name is Will Ireton, born and raised in Japan. I lived my first 15 years of my life in Japan. Grew up playing baseball, wanting to be a baseball player, and so, staying in Japan wasn't really an option. I pursued a dream of becoming a ball player in the States. So I actually, from high school, came over to the States, played college baseball, ended up becoming a minor league player for a year with the Texas Rangers. So, but then realized that, playing was that was the highest level I could possibly go with my talent level. So then, of course, the second best option is to be part of baseball and to work in it. And I took a couple internships with the Texas Rangers, with the New York Yankees. I ended up working back in Japan for a year, but then I was able to finally land a gig with the Dodgers as an interpreter for Kenta Maeda. My job title is Performance Operations Manager. In a nutshell, I basically support the players and coaches in the clubhouse level, making sure that they get whatever they need, whether that be scouting materials or documents or anything that the front office sends down on a daily or by series basis. And it's also managing the tech needs that we have when we need to set up TrackMan or Edgertronic or anything like that for our pitching side. And really trying to fill in the gap. Everybody specializes in their own field, but at the same time, I recognized that there was a need for somebody to try to, basically take the last mile to finish the task. I do travel with the team. My general schedule is what I do usually is when I get to the park, it's really, we have what they call a presentation for our hitters. We call it hitters presentation. That's basically to go over the starting pitcher and any important relievers that we're going to potentially face that series. So preparing the necessary footage, the looks, what to emphasize. We have all the information. The coaches prepared the information, and it's kind of distilling it in a way that makes it accessible to the players ultimately. So that's a big chunk of my work during the day. Sure, I think the biggest thing is to get your foot into the door in any capacity. I think we forget that, ultimately what gets you to the next job within the organization is most likely your relationship that you have with anybody, whether that be your boss or other people. You just never know who can, who's going to reach out and could help you out personally. So, I think once you're in it, definitely, there's a lot of avenues to get in now, fortunately, whether that be from the business side or baseball side, and even within baseball side, there's so many opportunities for young kids to be able to, come in. I think it's really, once you're in, it's just, do the work, keep your head down and contribute in any way possible. And people above will definitely recognize right off the bat that you're a little bit different, not just a smart guy, but somebody who works hard and is humble. Yeah, I think the flashy aspect of this job is that you're seeing the people on TV in person. And I think the biggest, the fun part of this is getting to know them in person and being able to support them in person. Ultimately, they're the guys who are, bringing in the fans. They're the guys who are going to win the games for you in a sense. So it's really being able to truly support them, the athletes at their best. It's somewhere I wanted to be personally. So I think that's the cool part about the job. Yeah, it's a recognition, I think, that deserves much more recognition in general. I think we sometimes go about throughout our day, working hard and doing whatever it takes to help the team or help your job or help other people around you. But to recognize that your heritage, I think, is important because whether you like it or not, that's your identity. And your identity is going to carry throughout your whole life. So to take that moment, take that month to reach out to your culture or maybe relatives that you haven't spoken too much, or just taking the time to recognize part of you that's sometimes could get forgotten in this age. That's what it means for me personally.